Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Katie Roach, the editor, and I'm joined here today with Coleman instructor Lance Sexton. How are you doing, Lance?
I'm doing great, Katie. Glad that it's Friday.
Me too. Bob is out this morning, but he will be back on Monday. And we've got a lot of information to go over today. We've got that $1.9 trillion stimulus package that we're going to be discussing, and we're also going to be talking about movement toward extending PPP. But before we do that, we're going to get into the polls. So the first poll is, are you making PPP loans through the end of March 2021? And the reason we're asking this, Lance, is because we're starting to see some banks say they're actually finishing up loans that they're doing this week, and they're talking about ending their participation.
I'm hearing that throughout the industry, Katie, because people with the whole code situation and the amount of time it takes to actually get an approval, they don't want to accept a ton of applications at the last second and not be able to get them processed. But hopefully an extension will pass.
Yeah, and we will get into that. There are a couple movements now to get it extended. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets extended at least a couple months here. It looks like we've got 83% saying yes, they're going to continue participating, and 13 saying no. Does that surprise you?
It does surprise me because I've heard more participant banks talk about the possibility of shutting off the applications a week to 10 days in advance of the 31st, just for goodwill purposes. I mean, this round of PPP has been incredibly different than the initial round. The approval process has taken longer, and I think they don't want to accept a bunch of applications and somehow get those hung up if it does not get extended. Now, guys, we all know they'll extend it. But until Congress acts, there may be a period. Even if they do extend it, Katie, my concern is that there's going to be this shut off on the 31st, and then Congress messes around, finally passes something, and then it gets restarted, a month later or 3 weeks later or however long it is. But, I have heard in the industry quite a number of institutions that have talked about shutting applications off in advance of the final day.
Right, and you don't want to get anything stuck in the program, stuck in those hold codes and things like that. I know a lot of groups are discussing, what do we do about those hold codes, because there's still probably a lot of loans that have been held up in that. And if the SBA doesn't, at the very least, accept loans past that current date, at least that are already in the system, those people will get kicked out, and that would be really unfortunate. The next question is the 504 first lien interest rate regulated by SBA. Lance, what's the answer?
Well, I've never specifically seen regulations related to interest rate on the 504 first lien interest rate. And there are probably some people that work at CDCs that could help me with this one, but your first lien is just a regular commercial loan. And typically financial institutions are going to charge a normal competitive interest rate like they would on any other similar size commercial loan. So I'm not 100% certain that it's a no, but I'm pretty sure there's no SBA regulations related to rate.
Yeah. And the third question, can you refinance a 7A loan with a 504 first?
That probably should just be with
I'm guessing that's first lien.
It probably should just be a 504 loan. Well, and the answer is you can. Absolutely. There have historically been hoops that you have to jump through to be able to refinance a 7A loan with a 504 loan. There is some regulation that's being proposed that would make it easier and more seamless to refinance a 7A loan with a 504.
And you're going to be talking about 504 loan refinance next week on Wednesday, correct?
We got a webinar coming up. We're going to be talking about the different types of projects you can do with a 504 refinance. And of course, right now it's a really hot loan product in your SBA product mix because, I'm seeing quite a number of 504 refis come across my desk because of the very low fixed interest rate on the debentures.
Yeah, so we were already kind of hinting at this earlier in the show, but yesterday there was a group of senators who introduced what they're currently calling the Ppp Extension Act of 2021, which is a bipartisan bill that would essentially just extend PPP applications for another 2 months to May 31st, 2021. It would also then provide on top of that a 30-day period to process applications that are still pending that are in the hold code limbo right now. So this is a step in the right direction, but I'm curious what you think. Is this enough?
Well, the problem is the money was set aside to help small businesses during the pandemic. And, I don't think based on the way this round of PPP's gone that they'll use up all the money in 2 months. And my desire would be to see an extension that gave small businesses, participant lenders, and the SBA an opportunity to use up that money to the benefit of Main Street. So this is certainly a step in the right direction. I do like the fact that they gave an additional 30-day period for processing because of the issues and getting things through SBA's system. But if you ask me what I would like to see in legislation, if there's any senators or, Congress members on the call today, I'd like to see it extended through the end of the SBA fiscal year or until money runs out. So effectively, I'd like to see it extended through September 30. But this is certainly a step in the right direction. There's still plenty of money in the program that could help small businesses, and we, the participant lenders, need the opportunity to get that money out.
Yeah, it's definitely a big hot topic right now, especially right with all the loans that are currently just waiting to be accepted. And there's also the issue of we've got a whole bunch of new rules that were just rolled out, and a lot of places have not been able to really utilize those new rules. Maybe there's businesses that couldn't get a PPP loan before that now can. And it's a very short period of time before the program ends. So I think it is important to at least get it extended a bit so some of those businesses that couldn't get the loans before could.
Well, I think, Katie, you make an excellent point. When you consider, as an example, Schedule C PPP borrowers, brand new set of rules. My phone has been ringing constantly with Schedule C filers asking about the new process, saying, can I get a PPP loan and how do I calculate it? And I share that information. And then I end the call by saying, you need to apply today because the program effectively is slated to end on March 31st. Now, I believe that Congress will pass an extension to the PPP loan program. But Katie, my big question is, can they do it in time to keep it from stopping for a little while?
Right.
I don't know. Congress has not shown the ability to do things quickly. Now, when the first initial CARES Act came out, it was amazing. Congress moved quickly and acted quickly, but right now it's not showing the ability to do hardly anything in a quick way. So I certainly hope they, if this is what we end up with, Katie, this is certainly a great improvement.
Right. And we've seen before where they passed it for a short period of time like they did currently. And I don't know, I think they could just keep adding on a little bit at a time. There is the question of, the country is starting to open up and you are seeing not as many people needing these PPP loans. And whether that's because they couldn't apply before because they're now just not needing them is unclear. But that is a question of, if we start to open up, are we going to need the program to continue on through the entire year or further? How long do we need it? And I think that's something Congress has to be addressing right now.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, one of the reasons I think that the PPP applications have not been as impressive as they were in the original rounds, Katie, is a lot of these people still have forgiveness applications out that have not been acted on, and they feel a little, you know, I had a borrower call me yesterday that was saying, well, I haven't gotten forgiven on my first loan. Why would I want to get another one? And, you know, I assured them they had a very small PPP loan, had submitted the forgiveness application. I said, you know, there's a very small likelihood that you're going to have a problem in the forgiveness process. You should get forgiven. But again, as a small business owner, you're sitting there and you have an obligation out there that you think is going to get forgiven. Until it is, you're going to have an uncomfortable feeling. And I think that it has certainly been an impediment to the amount of PPP loans. Honestly, in this extension, they ought to pass some sort of blanket forgiveness on loans of a certain size. And I'm not suggesting large PPP loans, Katie, but what I'm suggesting is take $50,000 and just say, we're going to wipe all those claims. They're all forgiven. Those people would come back aggressively and get another PPP loan. Now, I agree there's some that probably shouldn't be forgiven, but I've heard this story over and over from small business owners who've called me and said, I wasn't forgiven on my first one. I'm scared to apply for another. And they will get forgiven. It's just taking time.
Yeah, so the other big news is that Biden signed the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill last night, or actually yesterday afternoon. And we've gone over this a couple times on the show, but just to give you a better idea of what we're talking about, that's $7.25 billion for Paycheck Protection Program, which expands eligibility for nonprofits and digital news services. That really wouldn't make sense if we're not extending it. So I think it makes a lot of sense right now to at least include that. We needed the extra funding if we're going to extend it beyond. But even if we didn't get this funding, I think we probably wouldn't have hit the max on Paycheck Protection Program. I think we probably would have. We're only at about 50% of what was allotted. So I think we probably wouldn't have hit the max. Other things that are in there, they're going to have additional funds for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program. That program hasn't really been released yet, but the SBA is slowly rolling out some more details about it on their website. And there's also some more, they're trying to expand more who will be eligible for that. So I believe that's going to be a very useful product for businesses that did unfortunately have to shutter during this whole pandemic, places like wedding venues and theaters and things like that. There's a $15 billion addition to economic injury disaster loan advances. That's just going to be that grant money that comes with the program. That's just an expansion on that. There's also $28.6 million for a new restaurant revitalization fund, which is a grant program designed for restaurants specifically. It'll also include bars. We don't have a lot of details on it. We assume at this moment that that's going to be run similar to EIDL in that they'll go apply directly with the SBA. And then, of course, there's some money set aside for what they're calling the Community Navigator Pilot Program, and also for things like getting more efforts out to improve COVID-19 assistance programs and things like that.
Yeah, the nice thing is we've got some highlighted small business relief measures on this slide, Katie, but it represents $50.2 billion of 1.9 trillion.
Yeah, it's a very small, what is that? That's nearing 3% of the total package. But if you look at that, that's, we're still talking billions of dollars, which if you had told us last year that we were going to do this, I think it was funny because I remember Bob calling me up saying, they're talking about billions of dollars for the program, which was just unheard of at the time. And now we're looking at kind of a little bit disappointed that that's only, only a few $billion.
Yeah.
But it will definitely help small businesses. And I think it's good that it's a program that's out there helping. I mean, small businesses make up the majority of the U.S. And it's going to really help a lot of people.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think, the side benefit, the stimulus checks, which, a lot of people on this call may or may not get a stimulus check, but I can just tell you, having been a retailer, I never operated my store during a time when somebody got a stimulus check, but my brother has a retail business. And when those stimulus checks come out, it energizes his business and others in the community, and it does throughout the country. Some people pay bills with it, but some people go out and buy that sofa they've been waiting on, or buy that canoe they've been. Anyway, the point being is a lot of that money will get spent at small businesses throughout the country, and that will be very helpful as well.
Yeah, what the other thing that's interesting to me, and I haven't really delved too deep into it yet, is a lot of people took that stimulus check and invested that into starting a small business. And that's going to be a really interesting thing moving forward, because you've got all these businesses starting during the pandemic. And it'll be interesting to follow those and see how they go. I think it's great use of the money, and the more it's going out to people who need it, the better.
Absolutely.
So we did talk about the movement toward extending PPP until the end of May, but there are some other letters out there circulating that want to extend it further. And I think it's great that we're getting this, because you want people to be active in supporting what they believe in and things like that. U.S. Chamber of Commerce got together, and this is all of the Chamber of Commerce throughout the U.S. I think every state was represented. They have a coalition letter that's saying that they would like Congress to extend PPP through December 31st, 2021, so essentially through the end of the year. And there's also another letter that's circulating with 100 trade groups that is saying extend it at least till June 30th. So there are a couple dates being thrown out there, and I don't know if one of these will end up picked up instead of the end of May or not, but those are some of the other options that are coming out.
Hey, Kay, I want to tell all these groups they need to get on the bandwagon and understand SBA's fiscal year ends September 30th. That's why I said September the 30th. Let's just extend it through the end of the SBA fiscal year. But all of these are great options. It needs to be extended.
It absolutely does. And I think it'll be interesting to see which one ends up picked up. So we've got a couple questions here, and we'll go through as many as we can before we hit the 20 past the hour, but let's go ahead. So Andrea asks, can we accept a Schedule C PPP application if a person is currently collecting unemployment payments?
The answer is no. That's double dipping, more or less. And PPP Schedule C filer has the option of either collecting the unemployment benefits or getting a PPP loan. And if you look online, there are plenty of charts that you can find that compare the benefits between unemployment and a PPP loan for Schedule C filers, but you cannot do both.
Okay, Steve asks, many borrowers believe the first page on the 2483 SD borrower app is only asking for gross receipts of the borrower entity and not aggregated gross receipts of affiliates. Can you clarify the front page does or does not require aggregated gross receipts?
Well, when looking at the application, it appears that it's just supposed to be the borrower. But in digging through the IFRs, it says you're supposed to include the gross receipts, including those of the affiliates. And I think the purpose from that is, you might have 4 businesses and you have one that's doing terrible, but you've got 2 others that are doing incredibly well. You probably don't need a PPP loan, but it's supposed to include the aggregated gross receipts of affiliates. However, I am sure there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of applications that just had that on the borrower. But I do think it's confusing, so it's a good question, Steve. And all the
Steve,
related questions come along. If they're applying for a PPP2 loan and had a 25% reduction in a quarter of 20 versus 19, they're going to have, well, the answer is I believe that they're supposed to include the information from the affiliates as well.
Well, it looks like we're getting pushed down because we're out of time, but thank you for being on today. We're going through finalizing SBA's franchise and NAICS reports. Those should be available later today, so you can go ahead and order those. Lance, have you used these?
I encourage everyone. The franchise and NAICS code reports that Coleman Publishing put out are great reports to include in your credit underwriting. You can look at a particular franchise operation, look at SBA's 10-year lending history and what the charge-off and failure rate is. You can do the same thing with NAICS codes. It's a great underwriting tool for a good SBA citizen.
Absolutely. They're great reports, and I believe those should be done. I think Bob's finishing them up today. We've also got that 504 debt refinance webinar coming up, and there's a couple other webinars that we're working on right now on underwriting, best practices for cash flow projection and things like that as well. So make sure you sign up for those. And I believe that's all we have for today. Thanks for being on today, Lance.
Well, it's great to be here, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And, let's have a great weekend, and we'll probably see some changes next week as well. So join us next week.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.